is yours. We want to know from you where you're from, what's your role, what are your current challenges. Let us know. You can share anything in this chat, and also don't be shy. You can drop your handles there, and later during the webinar we will have a Q&A, so you can also share your questions during and after the case studies that will be presented today. For the people who are already joined. So officially we'll start in 4 minutes.
And for Aaron that asked if the recording will be made available, yes, we post all of our recordings for free on the Hub under our video library. And while we have time and space and your attention, I will show you the video library. So we've been curating these learning webinars for a really long time. You can see here, this was 2 years ago. And recently we organized these webinars into more of a learning journey, basically tracking like our entry point into the creative climate activism movement from a member of our community's honest conversation about driving change to learning from people like Raz Godinlick on new narrative skills, John Alexander. We've got, it just goes through like all of the kind of major players that you might want to know of, and we will definitely just be adding them here. And if you, I'm probably looking to Polly and Media Bounty, but if you, Joss also does a lot of like educational content. If you guys want to promote your stuff here, we're happy to add it under our partner webinars. And just to show you some cool recent things we launched recently, DeSmog have a board on the Hub where you can contribute to investigative climate journalism. So we just launched that last week. And if you want to share your stories to drive frontline change, you can. Clean Creatives have done like an awesome challenge through the Hub, calling on different, like these are young students. That's a little like internal update, things we don't have time to always communicate that we've been working on.
Thank you for sharing, Lucy. As we're officially going live in 2 minutes, maybe meanwhile, for the people who are already here, we can share a 1-minute video on Creators for Climate.
Creators for Climate is a global network on a mission to drive action and awareness of our climate and ecological emergency. We're an ecosystem of brains that has the power to change the world. We're looking for more creative and beautiful minds willing to learn, imagine a better future, and act on the climate crisis. We're a living network of interconnected and communicating roots, working in symbiosis. And we want our numbers to mushroom. More brains always make things better. So whether you're a scientist, designer, activist, performer, developer, farmer, strategist, filmmaker, brand specialist, writer, investor, engineer, policy advisor, or simply a passionate human, we want you to join us. Because creative thinking is going to save the planet we call home.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this Creators for Climate event on campaigning for change. We are super excited that this is the first version of this series of our ethical agency pioneers sharing their learnings of what creativity for good looks like and what campaigning for change is. We're so excited to have you. As everyone is slowly coming in, we just want to state that the chat is your place. Please let us know who you are, where you're from, where are you based, where are you calling in from, and perhaps what company you're with or what agency, or if you're a freelancer. Creators for Climate is a global community, really. So this is an interactive call We do ask you all to please stay on mute to have enough space for our speakers. And then at the end of the speakers, we will have a Q&A. So there is actual space to ask your questions. So the chat is all yours. And also feel free to use the chat if you have questions meanwhile, and we will curate the chat and see what kind of questions pop up. So as everyone is joining this webinar, we have 76 people already joining. I'll just share a short 1-minute video on Creators for Climate, so to give some people the time to drop in.
Creators for Climate is a global network on a mission to drive action and awareness of our climate and ecological emergency. We're an ecosystem of brains that has the power to change the world. We're looking for more creative and beautiful minds, willing to learn, imagine a better future, and act on the climate crisis. We're a living network of interconnected and communicating roots, working in symbiosis. And we want our numbers to mushroom. More brains always make things better. So whether you're a scientist, designer, activist, performer, developer, farmer, strategist, filmmaker, brand specialist, writer, investor, engineer, policy advisor, or simply a passionate human, we want you to join us. Because creative thinking is going to save the planet we call home. Creators for Climate.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, change makers. Congratulations, you made it. You are here. We have 90 people joining at this moment, 3 minutes after the start. So there will be some more people coming in. And as they do, we want to welcome you and share that the chat is yours. Please use it. Introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from. And also you can use it later on to ask any questions that you might have for the panelists. And we are curious to hear your questions on tactics and learnings that you miss in your own efforts to campaign for change and want to learn from our panelists. So at the end, we will have some space. You can share your question in the chat, and we will ask you to unmute and ask your question then. Meanwhile, we will ask you to stay muted for now. So as people are still coming in, I will share a little introduction for who is new to Creators for Climate. And I'm super happy to be here with our chairwoman and initiator, Lucy von Sturmer, who has been spearheading this movement for 4 years, since 2019. So she might jump in as well, and then we have some questions for her later.
I was just giggling if we were really going to play this video once again. I'm getting a bit mesmerized, but
So Creators for Climate is a nonprofit global network of creative professionals dedicated to building a new future. So why we exist? The communications industry with its glossy campaigns have been selling us lifestyles of overconsumption for decades. An inconvenient truth, polluters rely on the marketing, PR, and advertising industries to maintain their license to operate. But there is a growing movement to write a new story. A growing movement of professionals using the power of the persuasive industries to build a just and regenerative world. So we began in 2019 as a response to the rallying cry for change by Extinction Rebellion. They stated this is an emergency and the creative industry should act accordingly. They sent an open letter that said, you've been selling us things that people don't really need, and you can do anything you want in a shift mass behavior in a heartbeat. So what can we do? What can the creative industry do to push for that shift is what we've asked in that global summit, How Creators for Climate started in 2019. And from then, we have grown into the action all the actions that we did in 2020. The online collaboration platform, The Hub, which was launched in 2021 during COVID, grew Creators for Climate exponential and global. And now in 2022, last year, we became an official nonprofit organization. So it's been quite a journey, and it's completely built on the sweat and passion of volunteers. So it's a grassroots movement that has now really gained its maturity in becoming a global nonprofit organization across 40 countries. So we drive change in 3 ways: community building, which is the platform, The Hub, to equip professionals to become change agents; industry action and alliance, which you will hear more now, to raise the bar on creativity for good and support agencies that commit to action; climate solutions, so we do matchmaking and partnerships to support NGOs and climate initiatives. So the climate solutions, they are out there to amplify their cause. And this all happens on The Hub. So The Hub has people from over 50 countries. It has over 1,000 resources. You can find events, tools, a directory to find allies, and courses and training, among which the Greenwash Watch. And we do these monthly learning events just like this one. There's also a city lead program. So if you are in a little town and you want to start a Creators for Climate meeting, you can become a city lead of that specific city. And industry action. So we are building an ethical agency alliance, supporting agencies that are walking the talk on climate action. And how is we call on 3 of their 10 employees to commit to the pathway for change. And all the agencies that are here with us today are actually the first pioneers. So we're really happy to have them and hear from them soon. And the first step is really to collaborate, finding your allies is step number 1, which is joining the platform. To learn, so to empower your team to be reskilled, to feel confident to even communicate about the climate emergency, and ultimately to take action. And take action means to sign a fossil fuel divestment pledge. So these are the steps. So we are building an alliance of frontrunners, raising the bar on what it means to use your creativity for good. Because ultimately, we want to amplify climate solutions, because the climate solutions exist, and some of them are just gathering dust on the shelves of scientific magazines. But we have created a groundswell of change and also a network of creatives to support these solutions. And we've run over 10 campaigns to support thousands of assets for campaigns worldwide. So today we are here for the kickoff of our alliance of ethical agencies who are paving the way. And I'm curious, Lucy, why have we started the Ethical Agency Alliance, and what do we hope to achieve? Maybe you want to share some insights there.
Thanks, Zoe. Yeah, I mean, one of our insights from running this grassroots community was that creative professionals really needed a pathway into what an ethical career could look like. And we realized that there was a lot of untapped knowledge in the founders and the pioneers that are leading this movement that could help to accelerate our collective potential for action. And actually the conversation that I had with Joss on his podcast was a catalyst where we were kind of connecting over challenges that felt uniquely of a new breed of kind of agency founder. The typical life cycle of an agency would be that hot young creative director would start an agency, grow it, sell it for profit, and kind of move on. And actually what we have here today are a bunch of creatives that are building businesses that have a greater purpose. So it's really to work together to learn from these ethical agencies, but also to hopefully work to create a competitive advantage, because saying no to polluting clients comes with a cost. And we think that there's a legitimate role for a civil society player such as us to actually create even more reasons for agencies to walk the talk on climate action. So that's all I have to say on it. And I'm really looking forward to the Q&A at the end, because we're really curious to hear what the community think. And I'm hugely apologetic that our Zoom is capped at 100 people. I will go into the back end now and try and upgrade us. Apologies. Zoe, back to you.
Awesome. So this is the moment where we introduce our speakers. Josh Ford from Enviral, Matt Hawking from Leap, Adrian Ma from Fan Club, you guys wave, Sam Nar from Kibbo Kift Agency, Gus Murray from Revolt, and Polly Roberts from Media Bounty. So happy that you guys are here. And yeah, congratulations for being our first pioneers. We're super excited about this. So we're gonna show these agencies and these pioneers are gonna show lessons really and case studies of what creativity for good looks like from their angle. And then at the end, there is room for questions. So we're gonna start with you, Josh.
Hello, everyone. Zoe, Lucy, thank you so much for that. And for, bringing so many amazing people from what it seems to be all around the world together. You asked us to put together some case studies for what, I guess, creativity good means for us. And I've only got a few minutes and I like to chat. So it was a bit of a tough one because if I had some more time, I'd probably go into a B2B case study, as I think that's where us as creatives should be spending a lot of time and effort and focus at the moment, and looking at big transformation in B2B brands because of the current economy, and because I think that they're the organizations that are the most amount of risk of greenwashing and unintentionally greenwashing. I'm a big believer that most greenwash communications at the moment is coming because of just poor information and unintentionally being done. So definitely, if you're in that camp, in that journey, sign up to Creatives for Climate. Bit of a plug for you guys and your course that you're doing. But then I thought about the audience and the time of day, and we're all creative people. I mean, everyone's creative, but I can imagine Creatives for Climate community, a lot of people are going to be creative, and it's a Wednesday afternoon, and everyone's busy. So I thought I'd break the rules because I like to break the rules, and I also am really passionate about adding value. So I'm going to show you what it's like behind the scenes at Enviral in the pitch phase of us bringing together the ideas for a campaign. And we got approached a year ago by the amazing Feed Films. I think Feed Films are actually in the chat, that they might be here, and Dan from Feed Films and the team. Yeah, they approached us wanting to effectively capture the behind the scenes of agencies in our space and how we operate. And we were in the middle of doing a citizen science campaign for Everyday Plastic and Greenpeace called the Big Plastic Count. And a citizen science campaign is effectively getting citizens, the public, to get involved in a campaign to make real change. And in this campaign, we were looking to count household plastic in the UK for 1 week in May last year. And we were doing that to effectively look at how we can drive a sense of collaboration and community rather than brands or organizations just telling stuff at people, which is what a lot of people in the communications world do. But also in a campaign to collate accurate data on how much plastic is actually being consumed from households in the UK. And effectively, if we could get that data together, we could lobby the government and supermarkets with real life data. So that's what we did. And we got 200,000 people in the UK sign up. It was part of a much bigger multi-layered campaign rollout. And we kind of looked at the messaging strategy and the videography, 3 films in total. And we wanted this to appeal to as many people up and down the country as possible, because the majority of climate communications are speaking to the echo chamber, and that wasn't the aim of this. So this is just a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like at Enviral, hearing from real life people who are actually. I think it's playing. There we go.
It's playing. Sorry, I hit play. Did you want to finish your sentence, Joss?
Yeah, just in the sense that the team are really the people who are making this creativity for good change happen. So hearing from them is probably better.
There we go.
I still remember as a child watching the Rainbow Warriors board ships and oil rigs and do all sorts of stunts. And to imagine myself 30 years down the line being able to actually make regular Britons into Rainbow Warriors on land, quite exciting.
The launch video had to invoke this sense of curiosity, create this sense of FOMO, get people excited, get people to feel like they wanted to be part of this thing.
Then I think the idea was just brilliant. We created the Plastivists. It's always fun when you take a specific behavior, in this case, how you count your plastics, and make a whole persona out of that.
So let's fully embrace that and let's create a whole world around that.
I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson. He creates these, it's like a parallel universe where everything is exaggerated. Every personality is more. We had probably like 20 different personas.
Making sure that we didn't overly caricature people. What feelings are we trying to tap into and what feelings do we really do not want to tap into?
We're not pulling on people's heartstrings, we're not trying to invoke a sense of sort of guilt or shame in what's happening. Telling people to enjoy this moment.
All come together, we practice.
There was lots of heads, there was lots of strategy.
By that point, it's like, oh mate, what we're actually pitching is fucking incredible.
This was pretty crazy because we also knew that they had got 3 or maybe even 4 pitches with other agencies that day. So we got onto the call, we did the introductions, which always take longer than you expect them to. We go through the strategic approach. You know, we have a creative brief.
I told you that I like to speak, so thanks, Dan from Feed Films, for fading me out at the end there. Yeah, look, it was a really interesting campaign. I'd love for you to Google the Big Plastic Count. They've created a report with all of the findings, which I think is really important to effectively show what this thing stood for. And scarily, only 12% of recycling in the UK actually gets recycled. The rest of it gets burnt, buried, or shipped abroad. And we didn't know that, but this creative rollout was really, really important to mobilize lots of different people up and down the country. And it's been taken to government. Unfortunately, not much has been done by our lovely British government.
This case is so interesting, Josh. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sure there's loads of questions about it, but we're going to hold them in the chat for a moment as we go through the rest of the stories. This one is great. Thank you, Josh, from Enviro. Matt, what's going on at Leap?
Hey, everybody. What isn't going on as we have a very frenetic environmental pinball life? So we're kind of a multifaceted hydra of an organization where we've seen that there's one way of working, which is, utilizing our creativity, changing hearts and minds more than moving pixels and pencils, colors and words. And then the other side is really looking into our industry and how, like yourselves and your brilliant team, brilliant, small and highly effective team at Creative Climate, is how can we enable the now and next generation of creatives to take action the best way with their skills, their intent, especially go back to, like Josh said, we've got a government that's actually, pushing back on the role of creativity in schools and education, let alone anything around climate, planet-centered, life-centered creativity and action. So I guess Leap, over our years, we're just coming up to 2 decades old. When we first formed in 2004 off the back of me heading up graphics at Eden Project, we were, anybody seen the TEDx, the Lone Dancer video? We were...
I know that feeling.
Yeah, we were one of those lone dancers. Actually, we didn't expect to get friends and followers. We just kind of knew we needed to dance, and dance in a playful, creative, climate active way to stimulate the sort of tactility of environmental and social change through creativity at a time when actually it was quite sort of, what I'd call hair shirt and Hessian. Not that Hessian is not a great material. It's just when to use these materials. I like sexy, surprise, curious eco. You wouldn't expect it to be there. So we've been I guess, purveyors of that and sharing our learnings at every stage of our journey, really to help other creatives kind of do it better than us as well. So what I've got here, so I don't over talk, we got a variety of things, but I was thinking about campaign, and we use these terms like creativity for good, design for change, design for good. Can't it just be creativity? Can't it just be design? It's much the same as, why is veganism and vegetarian a bolt onto a menu? And why is that not the core menu? And then meat and the things that aren't so good are the extras to make you consider, oh, do I choose that or do I not? That's a policy in Leap. We only buy vegan or vegetarian, not that we're all vegan, vegetarian, but the meat's on our client or us if we decide to do it. So with this, we were briefed, we were asked by a printer, said, we want to do a campaign. We do an annual calendar, and you can do what you want with this calendar. And generally that's like, wow, we can just create. But actually, this calendar goes out to 800 agencies that we know of. So actually, what's our stealth way of getting agency to realize there's some actions that they could do, and who are our friends that we would like to showcase? So we pitched the idea. Could we bend the rules, like Joss was saying, on this calendar? One, let's showcase the next level of papers that are entering the market. So we work with Notpla and the seaweed organization that won the Earthshot Prize. We worked with a load of others, GF Smith Papers, to first, let's showcase papers. It's a calendar. Yes, it's physical. We're for pixel footprints and digital footprints. We look after them both. The next thing was like, yes, anyone can design something beautiful and effective, and it is a calendar. That's cool. Do we need to redesign something? Actually, there's been some really good designs done by other agencies. So we, in this case, an agency called Believe In, we asked the printer, I don't suppose you got their plates and their cutter guides from last year? And they're like, yeah, we got the cutter guides, right? Cool. We won't create another campaign then. We'll use that. The next thing is, what is the campaign for this time? So it's change with print. Very simple. What is the power of print and what could we change? And this was what our sweet spot was. Inviting our friends, so clean creatives, creative conscience, sustainable creative charter, and design declares, which are just launched, which you're part of. And let's actually have this on the back of the calendars so that when they arrive at these agencies, they can kind of learn about looking after themselves, how to assess your current clients, challenge, is your CEO, MD, board working with fossil fuel powered creatives? And so the client was a little bit scared, but trusted us. We said we'd water down some of the language in a positive way so that, if some of those agencies were working with fossil fuel companies at the time, then at least they would receive the calendar in a open way. And I think this is one of the things we've got to be mindful of in a time of mass discomfort at all levels of society and the planet, that we don't overhit with the negative, because there's a lot of negativity. You're going to ask later what the best campaigns for change is. Nature's showing us the best campaigns right now, and they're not pretty. So really, this was our strategic stealth mode to get behind 800 agencies and the art of what's not known, the unknown. What would 800 agencies do? We've got no way to track who shifted, who received, who in their business, how many employees they had. Some had 100, some had 2, but we thought this was probably one of our favorite micro campaigns. It didn't cost a lot of money to get to the heart of all creativity, us as designers and who we work with. That's me done.
Beautiful, Matt. I love that. Thank you for sharing this little drop. Oh, there you have it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every detail, but I just wanted, you'll all know this one. Throughout it, if we had quotes, every designer likes a quote, don't they? If you're not designing for planet, what planet are you on? I mean, put in the chat who wrote that line, if anybody knows.
I love that. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Next up is Adrian, Fan Club PR.
Hi, guys. So the question you posed to us is, what is creativity for good? I think creativity can be really, really powerful in helping us rethink the world and creating behavior change. If you think about the Impressionists, they made us think differently about how we see the world with paint. Think about Ai Weiwei and all the work that he's done around refugees. That's made us really think about the world and migration. And you think about filmmakers like Sofia Coppola reframing Tokyo, or the film sets that she works with. Reframing problems is really, really important to helping to solve them. One of the problems that we were looking at is e-waste. E-waste is really, really nasty. We were working with a client called Music Magpie. E-waste has lots of poisons in it. The chemicals leak into the waterways. That gets drunk by local people, and babies are born with horrible defects. And it's really, really nasty. And it also contributes to climate change. So this is what we did to reframe that problem. If you want to just play the film.
Absolutely. There we go.
As the G7 summit commenced, a giant replica of Mount Rushmore, dubbed Mount Recyclemore, was unveiled to the world's media by re-commerce site Music Magpie. This monumental structure, constructed from 12 tons of e-waste, depicted the leaders at the G7. At the summit, the environment and climate change were high on the agenda. Electronic waste should have been too. According to the UN, over 50 million tons of e-waste are generated worldwide each year. E-waste is a serious threat to our planet, polluting soil, water and air. Pre-campaign research showed that 4 in 5 Brits didn't know what e-waste was, and nearly half were unaware it impacted climate change. It was time to take e-waste seriously, to educate people on this growing issue and to instigate real change. Working alongside artist Joe Rush, we set out to put Music Magpie and the environmental impact of e-waste on the international news agenda by creating a summit of our own. Perched high on the dunes overlooking the G7 summit, Mount Recyclemore had a massive impact and got people talking.
And right across the street, an artist built a sculpture of the 7 leaders made out of electronic waste and called it Mount Recyclemore.
Mount Recyclemore was lauded by almost every major international news organization. The company's leadership were interviewed or quoted 174 times by the world's media talking about the issue of e-waste. Post-campaign research shows that 28% of people now know what e-waste is, and 61% of people know that e-waste contributes to climate change. The campaign can be recalled by 20% of all UK adults alone, and it worked. For Music Magpie, 38% of tech trade-ins on Music Magpie during the campaign were first-time users. Music Magpie donated £1 for every trade-in to WasteAid during the campaign to create its first e-waste management education program, and will continue to work alongside them to promote change. Mount Recyclemore has now been adopted by the Eden Project, where it will continue to enlighten visitors every year. Mount Recyclemore successfully led the call for a change in how we deal with e-waste and got people trading. Monumental change is being made.
Well, it looks amazing.
Love that. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, wow. It's really exciting to see. I actually didn't know that about e-waste. Like, there's so much to learn in the climate emergency, and please feel free to ask stupid questions, because we have to educate ourselves. And this is a great way of Creativity for Good to do that. So thank you for this example. Sam, are you here? Kibbo Gift Agency.
I'm here, yeah. Adrian, that campaign is amazing. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to be on this alliance. It's really cool to be a part of it, and thank you for pulling it all together. I suppose, yeah, I did have a slide if it's going to show up anywhere. But I suppose, yeah, a bit of background about us. Yeah, we're a PR and performance marketing agency that started approximately 5 years ago now, which sounds a bit crazy. I didn't really expect it to be that long. But before I kind of go into the campaign, it kind of just a bit of background in terms of how I came to start this agency was really born out of a frustration with the current industry and the way it was working, especially at big agency level, which is where my background was. So doing Kibbo Gift Agency was basically like a last hurrah before I was going to quit the industry altogether and just work in a record store. So I'm pretty glad I didn't now. So Climate Clock has been one of our kind of long-term clients. If nobody, we worked with the team to try and kind of recreate that viral moment for them, which we did with Climate Emergency Day. So Climate Emergency Day 2023 was the second annual Climate Awareness Day to mark the moment, the time the Climate Clock ticks into a brand new year. So if nobody's seen the clock before, I think you can see it quite clearly on the top 2 images on the screen, but it's actually a live countdown to how long we've got to pass 1.5 according to IPCC data. So we worked with the Climate Clock team to launch Climate Awareness Day, which is a new environmental annual awareness day. And this time around this year, our coverage, we got really lucky. We worked with amazing activists. We had global activations happening in loads of different countries. We achieved 3.7 billion potential impressions. I wish I could have produced a really slick, lovely video like Adrian to show all of our impacts. Yeah, some of the actions that we had planned was from New York City to London to South Korea to Ghana, as well as these big monumental clocks that you can see, for example, on the left-hand side. We also had loads of hundreds of handheld clocks that you can see on the bottom screen, which is held up by Shai Barrera, which is a Mexican activist that the Climate Clock regularly works with. And yeah, we got over 55 pieces of coverage that we earned, and then that obviously got picked up by loads of news wires internationally across 17 different countries in North America to Europe to Asia to the Middle East to Oceania to South America. And to bring it back to the earlier point in terms of why I started Kibbo Gift, it was really to have this instant tangible impact for all of the clients that we're working with. Some of the brands that I was working with before, which were household consumer names, I felt you really missed that impact of working with big brands. It almost feels like they just put any news out and it just gets news, and it's not really for anything. Whereas everything that myself, my team, and everybody else in this alliance is doing is creating impact with every touch point and every kind of output that we have, which I think is really, really important. And that kind of really motivates me to carry on doing what I'm doing. Going back to the campaign, some of the highlights from this one, we had broadcast coverage on video wires across Asia and North America. We received national coverage in Australia, Brazil, India, Kenya, Nigeria, Singapore, Thailand, UK, and US. One of the big moments that was a real success factor in this was that the Climate Clock team in Brazil managed to broker this amazing chance and opportunity to project the clock onto the Christ the Redeemer statue, which you can see on the top left. When that happened, it was a semi-viral moment. There was a live stream of the moment from The Independent and Reuters, and it led to loads of other different pieces of interesting coverage as well. One highlight from me and the team was the article being picked up in The Verge, which was a great tech publication. But the comments on that, there was over 130 comments on that. It got placed from that into Reddit, where there was loads of human interaction and conversation about our campaign and the clock as well on there, which I feel like is again going back to that impact and seeing tangible human connection with the campaign. It was really you could really measure it, which I think is really great. So this kind of campaign is a really great example of an innovative awareness tool, which is the Climate Clock, and showing that as a really urgent deadline that should be front of mind for everybody. Meeting effective communications, which is our part, which is a really really nice kind of moment of success to know that it can be kind of measured in this way. As a result, the ticking clock is etched into the language of climate comms. I think everybody knows the notion of the ticking clock, and when they mention it, it might have come back from some way to the climate clock and the work that we've done, which is a really nice moment. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much, Sam. Amazing. This is really exciting to see. And for everyone who's tuning in, prepare your questions for the Q&A up soon. Feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we can read them for you if you prefer, or when we select you, you can raise your hand and unmute and ask it yourself. So think about your question as we move to Media Bounty and Polly.
Hi, thanks, Zoe. Thanks to you and Lucy for putting this all together, and thanks to the other speakers for sharing those really, really cool campaigns. It's, yeah, really inspirational. So yeah, I'm Polly. I'm head of strategy at Media Bounty. Media Bounty was founded in 2008, and we've evolved since then into an integrated team of 26 marketing and advertising people who are on a mission to be the leading ethical agency in the UK. So we work with brands and businesses who kind of share our philosophy that advertising shouldn't cost the earth, and we're media and creative agency. We also do a lot of strategy, brand strategy, comm strategy, creative strategy, as you'd expect, and we're starting to do a lot of ethical consultancy as well. So we've just been working actually this morning doing some training for a global electronics company to teach them how not to greenwash and how they should do green claims properly. We also founded the Conscious Advertising Network, which aims to hold kind of tech businesses to account over the money that they take and the sort of horrible stuff that they fund. Oh, thanks, Adrian. Love Can. And we also founded ACT Climate Labs, which aims to sort of upskill the climate industry to use advertising techniques to communicate on climate. So this work actually started with ACT Climate Labs. What we've found is that there's a huge amount of misleading climate narratives out there, whether that's coming from the government, as have already been mentioned, whether it's coming out of Tufton Street. There's a huge amount of mis and disinformation out there, particularly from the fossil fuel companies spending huge amounts of money just peddling bullshit, quite frankly. And the comms from the climate industry wasn't really keeping up with that. Our theory was that existing climate comms were either seen as sort of quite worthy, quite sciencey, talking about what might happen in 20 years on the other side of the planet, and not really kind of talking to people where they are. So we did a mammoth research project with some research partners called Bricolage, which was a mixture of like desk-based research initially by us, and then Bricolage helped us turn that into kind of quant and qual. And we went around to actually interview real people focused in sort of the Northeast, Yorkshire and the Midlands to kind of find out about what they care about, what was their view on climate. And what we discovered that actually it's like a massive bell curve, and you've got kind of 15% of the population on one side who think that climate change is a hoax and it's a myth and they're never going to get on board with it. Then you've got 15% on the other side who are sort of campaigners, like everybody probably on this webinar, who really think that there's stuff that we need to do and are quite active. But there's a huge chunk of people, about 70% of the population in the UK, who aren't ethical consumers, and they're not climate deniers, they're just deniers. They're just regular people who, despite all the different sort of identities and demographics, they share really remarkably similar opinions when it comes to sustainability. So out of this research, we got loads and loads of cool insights about them and how to engage with them through comms on climate. We created a white paper, which is called Beyond the Climate Bubble. You can download it on our website at mediabounty.com. I'll drop it in the chat when I finish waffling on. But in there's some kind of really specific actions that you can take to build comms that meets people where they are. So it's stuff like lead with a really strong personal benefit that makes it relatable, find trusted messengers to tell that story for you, buy media where you can see it. Don't preach to the choir, that 15% who you've already sold in. Yeah, what that ended up in, we worked with through ACT Climate Labs. We collaborated with one of our members who's called Possible, and we created a local campaign in the Midlands that used all of these learnings with a specific objective to get people in Birmingham to use their cars less, essentially. So roll VT, I suppose.
Transport. 24% of UK carbon emissions, and a key issue in fighting the climate crisis. So, how do you encourage people to drive less? Introducing Bump into Brum, a campaign by climate charity Possible and ACT Climate Labs to get locals in Handsworth, Birmingham, to reduce their car usage. We know people love their motors, but don't want to be preached to about the environment. To create behavioural change without making it feel like a sacrifice, we celebrated the benefits of leaving the car at home. We used local people who gave their real reasons why they love their area when they drive less. Then we made them local celebrities, on out of home, in the papers, on the side of the 74 bus. It worked. Since the campaign, 66% are more likely to consider changing behaviour to help the climate. Positive brand associations, if possible, are up 27%, and over 14% more people agree that having fewer cars on the street is a good idea. Possible. Transport.
Thank you so much for that one, Polly. And then we move to the last participant of the Ethical Agency Alliance, Gus from Revolt.
Hi guys. And this screen sort of shows is that I think what I was saying to some of the other founding members of this alliance is that the UK is really good creating cases and really good at investing in some of these opportunities for showcasing and making a difference in a climate level. What I've found and what we find in the Nordics is that we're in terms of the actual campaigns that we're running, but where we sort of operate, and that's our experience in Revolt, is to operate on a more strategic level with some of our brand partners. So a lot of the brands we work with, we haven't developed the nice campaigns and stuff that I wish, and I'm very inspired by some of the cases that I've just seen and that you guys have been seeing. I think they're wonderful cases, and it's really nice to see such great work being done. What we find is that in a Nordic capacity, what we're really working on is how do we work with the big B2B guys? And I think one of the speakers actually mentioned this, to actually scale the impact that we're trying to create in society. So working with some of the partners that we work with, we're working with different areas within their organizations to try and get them to think about how they can make an impact and take away from the traditional spend on whether it's some of the digital platforms, the usual suspects, Google, Meta, TikTok, etc., and reuse that money to be spent in actually making real world impact in form of actually climate or society. We've done quite a lot of work on the more societal based issues where we've worked with equality in terms of female pay and reunification in the Nordics, and also things like raising attention to like pride and other things. But we're in the climate side, we're, I think, still a newbie. And as I sort of tried to indicate in this slide, right, where we want to build those cases and we're really passionate about doing that, but we haven't got the cases yet. And that's something that we're sort of really hungry for, is to actually say, okay, let's find those brands and those partners that we can actually do it. And I think this is something that we'll never believe is going to be finished. You know, it's that I think Facebook coined it as 1% done. Like we'll always be chasing another project that will help us make an impact, because I think that's what we sort of stand on the shoulders of, you know, great creatives that are in our industry, that are thinking bigger thoughts, that are trying to change the world for good. But what we really need is the action. Like, how do we actually do this? Not just by, you know, making nice campaigns and stuff like that, but actually putting rubber where moment in time where we can either use our creativity as a force for good, or we can put it towards supporting business as usual. And that's where we really believe like there's an opportunity now, and more than ever with a platform like Creators for Climate, to actually harness our creative like intellect and our creative capital and inject that into essentially the economy and some of the society in the form of really positive impact. And that's what I'm hoping to be part of. And that's why I'm really proud to, you know, stand next to some really inspiring founding members, and to, you know, you guys that are running this whole platform. And it's really inspiring from that perspective. So I'll wrap it up by saying that I really look forward to the work that is to be done. And I look forward to the campaigns that haven't been, you know, briefed yet, that are going to appear. And hopefully we'll see some of those campaigns in this forum, but also more hopeful that we'll see them in the real world making a real difference and an impact.
Absolutely agreed, Gus. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, really, in sharing where you are in your agency and where you would like to be. I think this is the most important thing also, you know, within Creators for Climate as a community, but also within the Ethical Agency Alliance, that maybe we don't have all the answers, but at least, you know, together we can learn side by side. So thank you so much for that. That is super valuable. So from here, thanks everyone for sharing what Creativity for Good means for them. And from here, we will open the Q&A. And there's already been some really interesting questions in the chat. And if I may, Zoe Robinson, my name companion, I would love to start with yours. And Zoe's question was, how can lone creatives change our work, clients, or ways of working to be more green? And I think, Matt, you have been talking about, starting off as a lone dancer. And also Sam said something about, as a creative individual, where do you stand? So perhaps Matt can speak to Zoe's question to start with.
Thank you, everyone. Zoe's a friend of mine, so we know each other well. We've actually not lone danced; we've danced together. So as creators, we're all creative. I think, again, go back to the education thing, we're slightly disempowered about our creativity, the thing that defines us as humans from other species. But for me, it's just that simple thing of, rather than just accepting and receiving what a client says, I want this thing and I'd like it this way, and I like it on brand or a new brand or on this platform. It's where we start to challenge and what we call like the pathways of the landscape they're going to traverse, not just to get the product they want or the thing they want or the change they want to do in the world. Firstly, why are they doing it? Why do you need 100,000 signups if you only need 1,000 actions, or it's things like this, so we don't have to follow the norm. So I'd always say challenge the brief, and I'm not sure which organization, because there's so many now, did the challenge the brief campaign as well. So and then one of the ones on our calendar was the Sustainable Creative Charter. Just simple actions to have real honest conversations with the clients about why are you doing the thing you need to do. I am at fear, Zoe, that we are just moving into a green capitalist phase in society, where it's okay to just create another bamboo toothbrush or another thing that makes a difference to the environment, of something that was already useful. So going back to the original question, challenge. As an individual, I started off as a freelancer in his bedroom, creating a business that said that I was told that nobody would want to work with, because how could you only work with the planet in mind? Look where we are, now. And so the art of possible is always there, and it starts with us. We're that nexus, we're that bridge between society, industry, and the planet. Let's, seize the moment and challenge what we're being asked to do.
That's a legitimate answer. I love that, Matt. Thank you. And funny to hear that you're friends. And then Hannah Carter is asking, there seems to be a shared aim amongst all agencies in this alliance to raise awareness on the climate emergency. Have you got an example of another aim of your ethical agency and how you measure success against these goals? I think I would love to ask Polly to answer this question on measurement and goals.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I mentioned before that Media Bounty, we basically just want to do campaigns. We want to do work that makes the world better. And climate obviously is a massive, massive part of that. But there's all sorts of ways that we can kind of be more mindful in the work that we put out there, making sure that, like, how are we helping communities? How are we reflecting diverse audiences? Do we have sort of incidental inclusion? I think we're really good ad agencies of going, here's some media KPIs, here's some comms KPIs, here's some business KPIs. Just add on another KPI of like, what's the real world impact going to be? And I think, so clients are all at different places in the journey, and I think you've got to meet them where they are sometimes. And if you can make a client just a little bit better, then that's still really good. And I think it's kind of all these little steps will kind of add up to something more, and just sort of take them on the first step of that journey. I think is probably the way to do it.
Thanks, Polly. There's also a question from Georgie Howlett. I'm just curious, Georgie, do you want to unmute yourself and ask it, or should I just share it for you?
I'm happy to. I'm just trying to find it now.
You're here with us.
I guess I was interested to hear people's views on how comms and creative can close the intention action gap. So often people say they want to stop buying from Amazon or buy less meat or use less energy, but it's often then easier. So they'll say, yes, I'm I'm aware and I probably will do more of this, but sometimes that's quite flash in the pan. So how can we go sort of beyond that initial splash or peak of an attention grabbing moment that does get everyone's attention, and then sustain deep behavioral change, but through the medium of creativity, recognizing like who's in the room here. But you know, I work in this space, but I definitely don't have all the answers, and I'm really interested to hear what everyone else thinks on it.
I believe Sam wants to answer this question.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, typical marketing spiel is that you need X amount of touch points for somebody to create a change in their behavior, right? And I think in the work that we do through performance marketing or PR, we really value that point in terms of, okay, we get a media hit in The Guardian. It doesn't instantly mean that somebody's going to change a decision, but it could be a small part in that kind of wider touch point of them making a change. And I think you have to really realize that. And I think it's quite difficult for all of us as marketers to not have that as a tangible metric sometimes. But I really do believe, and we've seen examples for our time as well, that just being part of that system where you're constantly an extra additional touch point of good. That sounds really cliche. I'm not going to ever say that again. But doing something that is repeatedly just in people's faces as a good positive reinforcement is really the only kind of metric and belief system that we can have as marketers in that space.
Thank you for that one, Sam. So I guess for the final reflection, and please feel free, any more questions that our participants, our audience, our community has, you can also go into the hub later and ask our Ethical Aging Alliance founders and participants more questions. So don't worry, this is not our last touch point. We are here to, you know, learn together. So as a final reflection, I would like to ask our panelists in the last 5 minutes that we have, what more needs to happen to turn the creative industries into a real force for climate action? And this is really the centering question also, why we come together in Alliance to, you know, strengthen and learn and to see like what we could do collaboratively. So I'm thinking maybe Joss, you want to start answering this from your perspective.
Nice. I'm going to be put on the spot at the moment a little bit, but like, be better or you're going to die. That's the message that has basically been spread in the climate communication space for the last like 15 plus years. And that's not shifting the needle at all. So what if we talked about life, prosperity, better business, better recruitment processes, a happier planet? What if we imagine things in a slightly different way, rather than just focusing on the negatives? I think that's a big thing for me. Like, the creative industries has got the ability to imagine a better future. There's some brilliant authors, John Alexander's Citizens, or Rob Hopkins's book and his podcast are literally there to help facilitate imagining a better future and shifting a different narrative. And I think that's the thing that we need to do.
Agreed. Any other of our speakers feel the urge to speak up next? Maybe Adrian or Gus on this question.
Cool. Yeah. I think the creative industries are an industry, and it is ultimately a lot of those people in the industry are here to make money. And I think you're always going to have some people who are prepared to work with the bad guys. So Havas is the latest example, as I'm sure we're all aware of as well. But it's always going to be an activist set. I think Polly described that before. There's 15% who are going to be a bit more activists. And I think it's up to that set, us on this call, to have those conversations and make the noise to create that change. And that's why communities like this and webinars and calls like this are really, really important to keep that conversation alive, keep pushing that. Like, I see Lucy, I see Zoe, I see Duncan from Clean Creatives out there making this noise, and it's those voices that's going to create change.
Awesome, Adrian, appreciate that. Maybe, yeah, Gus or Matt or Polly, we have kind of a few closing words on this one.
I can quickly add to it. I think I definitely share the sentiment in terms of like getting out there. I think one of the things that I see in terms of our industry and forums like this is how do we direct our creative capital, so to speak? And one of the biggest areas that we're focusing on is not so much on the consumer side, it's on the actual policymakers that can actually force change from a company perspective. So they take responsibility for their products and the return of their products. And so we don't have this whole growth mindset and we shift from using virgin materials, putting it back into the society that turns into waste streams that we try and punish consumers to buy less or not punish, but sort of convince them, when really what we're trying to do is focus on the root cause and say, okay, how do we get policymakers, politicians, some of these more sort of behind the scenes forums like Davos, some of the COPs and things like that, to actually make policies that actually affect and have a real impact in terms of our society and the companies and how they operate. And I think that's where we can really use our creative, essentially capital and efforts to direct that attention and that spotlight to those individuals and to those issues, that we can really drive that change. So that's, I think, my 3 cents.
I totally agree, Gus. I think next year, New York Climate Week, we should map the Empire State Building. Let's advocate and make noise. I think the last word is for Matt for now, with his cat.
Yeah, sorry, the cat needed some attention. But interestingly, there was a thing in The Guardian yesterday about people that like cats are naturally more attuned to liking nature and things. So anyway, slight thing. So I agree with everything that's been said. I would also really like to hear in a sec, if we have time, I know you said out of time, but
we have 2 minutes.
Yeah, Polly and Lucy's take on this question as well. But for me, I think it's just support those that are doing the work. As we've heard, sometimes there's a nature to pull people down. We've got to come out of our silos, drop our egos, and look in a more sort of holocratic way to the way we act and interweave with this giant ecosystem that we're part of, not apart from. Language is a problem. You know, you could open a room and go, who understands the word sustainability, regenerative, net zero, intersectionality? More often than not, everybody will, if they're being their truth, will go, I don't understand any of it. So how can we break through these barriers and make it accessible for all? Somebody made the comment about education. I'll keep going back. We've got to reformat our whole education system globally. So it applies to the individual rather than mass. Last thing, activism, reactivism, or inactivism. We've all got ways to act, do some form of action. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the brilliant people at Stop Oil are doing. How can we all be active in our way with others, in whether that's at the boardroom, table, the client, community? Reactivism is going to be really expensive if we leave it too late. So it's going to cost all of us, not just the planet, but the later we take as creatives to take action, the more expensive it gets for all. Inactivism, you're dead. In most things. So that's my 2 cents. I'd love to hear from Lucy and Polly.
Thanks so much, Matt, for passing the mic. This has just been such a great session. You know, the truth is I started Creatives for Climate out of my own climate anxiety, needing a space that was like commercial free, if that makes sense, where I also didn't wear my consultancy hat and I just showed up as a concerned citizen to have honest conversations. And 3 years ago, a lot of those conversations were around taking like really radical action. And what I realized in my impact journey was that we needed to provide more pathways for people. So our community, somebody today asked, like, what can I do? I'm just one freelancer individual, you know, but also for ethical agencies like yourself, like, how do I grow and sustain and compete against others? And so I think today for us was really about like, how can we celebrate what this transition looks like now? Without kind of having the barrier to entry so high for our careers, for our businesses and for us as individuals, and also to create a new tone within Creators for Climate, which isn't just about being a bunch of woke outsiders, but also really, meeting the market. So it's a really interesting moment for us to be partnering with an alliance of businesses that are using their creative skill sets commercially to drive climate action. And the question that I'm taking away from this, and that I'm really interested in Creators for Climate potentially supporting more, is, what does it look like for us to collaborate on our own campaigns beyond just client briefs? So watch that space for more. Zoe, do you want to say the last word? Polly, I think you were also invited to respond from that.
Yeah, so we are already 1 minute over the time of our webinar. So if it's okay with you, we'll wrap it up here and just invite you to continue this discussion on the hub, on the collaboration hub, where this webinar that's recorded will end up. And anyone can pop their question in there, and our agencies are joining the Ethical Agency Alliance are also in there to perhaps, answer any more questions. So the ending message is really everyone is welcome and everyone is needed. And yeah, climate action is super accessible. So just join and see how you can use your creativity for good. So thanks to all the Ethical Agency Alliance pioneers and speakers of today. Thank you for your amazing work, and see you on the hub.
We're sharing the webinar if anybody didn't get full access. And yeah, thanks so much to our brilliant speakers and to our brilliant community as always.
Thank you. Have a great one. Bye.